going on, everybody? Welcome to day 22 of the Black Music Month 30 series here on the Chris Stevens Writes YouTube channel. Of course, I'm Chris Stevens. June is Black Music Month. After today, we got 8 days left, man. Just about a week left. Incredible, right? It's been amazing, just been able to get through this whole series. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you're not new to the channel, if you are new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. I invite you to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you can be notified of all new content that drops on this particular channel. Of course, June 30 days, 30 videos, the BMM 30 project, Black Music Month. I'm probably going to take a break after when June is up because this is a lot of work, believe it or not. Researching, listening to music, figuring out what we're going to talk about, pick the day, and all of that good stuff. And I'm still trying to book maybe a guest or two more. Hopefully, I can get a guest or two more to close this month out and really make it an inclusive thing. But there will always be future opportunities for people to come on this channel to talk about different things with me. So we'll see how it goes. But yes, today, Saturday, good day to party, good day to get busy. And today we are going to party in the uncrowned, unofficial, or probably should be official, funk capital of these United States. It's not Philadelphia. It's not Washington, D.C., even though Go-Go is probably as funky as it gets. It's not New York City. It's not Los Angeles. Even though Los Angeles was influenced by one of these folks from this particular funk capital. It's not Memphis. Yeah, you tired of me naming cities yet? Okay. Dayton, Ohio. Yes, Dayton, Ohio is the capital of funk. When you think about the bands that came out of Dayton in the 60s and 70s and 80s and the resulting hits that came from that area in particular, I mean, you got to start with the band with the state name in their name, the Ohio Players. I mean, of course, they were the Ohio Untouchables at first, but they renamed themselves, in the middle of the 60s because they wanted to be, musical players, but they also wanted to be like, as Marshall Rock Jones said on their Unsung episode, pimpin' players. So the Ohio Players, they really touched that whole thing off. It was Sugarfoot, Marshall Jones, Clarence Satchel, Greg Webster, Junie Morrison, so many others. And of course, James Diamond Williams came along later on. And I mean, they were the band of the hour in Dayton, Ohio. I mean, that was who everybody else was shooting for after a while. And throughout the 70s, they had hits, man. There's Pain, Honey, Fire, Sweet Sticky Thing, Love Roller Coaster. So many great things, man. So many great songs. And they got some great ballads too. Like Sugar, he literally does just an insane job on Heaven Must Be Like This. Because he sings in this very, sweet, mellow, gentle voice. The sweet and sour taste of love we just made. And then, of course, when he gets to the chorus, he goes into what is now known as the Sugarfoot voice. So obviously, many people after him, like Sugar Bear from EU, his voice is a little bit of an improvisation of that. Your love is divine. Heaven must be like this. It must be like this. I mean, Ohio Players got jams, man. Sweet Sticky Thing is one of those. I Want to Be Free. I'm so tired of your lies. Shoot, 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 shoot. I want to be free. Incredible. And they literally just, everything about the Ohio Players was cultural branding for the most part. When you think about the early days on Westbound, because Westbound actually had a lot of black talent back in the day. I mean, I already mentioned that Parliament Funkadelic was over there. And of course, the Ohio Players got their start on Westbound before they moved to Capitol. But their Westbound covers, their Westbound covers were like S&M magazines. And they had a woman with a bald head on the cover, Pat Sugar Bear Evans. And she was Black and Native American, but she had shaved her head in the 70s. And she was always on these Ohio Players album covers in some sort of freaky deep pose. And people laughed on the Unsung when she said the record sold because of the model on the cover. She wasn't lying. She wasn't lying. Those were some free deep covers with a fine black woman with a shaved head on it. Shout out to the bald head gang. We out here, you know what I'm saying? So the Ohio players definitely set the tone for groups that were later to come. And of course, um, Heatwave is one of my personal favorites. Of course, Heatwave was founded by Johnny Wilder Jr. and his brother Keith, Dayton natives. And honestly, Johnny started the group first because the story of Heatwave beginning is actually a love story because Johnny met this girl named Rosalind while they were in high school together. And Johnny was going to Central State. Shouts out to the Marauders. But Rosalind was enlisted in the military. So without Johnny's parents knowing, without his family knowing, he dropped out of Central State and got with the same enlistment office as Rosalind. So they ended up in the same in the same enlistment, and of course fell in love and got married. Then of course they traveled all over Europe because that's where people go when when you're in the army. You see the world a lot. And he starts this group, Chicago Heatwave. And his brother Keith is still over in Dayton, and Johnny's like, Keith, will you come over here, man? I need a lead singer. And Keith is like, man, I don't know about going over there. And he went over there, and he was talking about when he went to Switzerland. He was like, it's cold, snow up to your kneecaps. Keith Wilder, he was a gem on that unsung episode. But yeah, Heatwave, they came out the box swinging, man, on Too Hot to Handle. With Too Hot to Handle, no half stepping, probably my top 3 Heatwave song. And of course, Always and Forever. I mean, we talked about Rod Temperton. Shout out to my guy Sonny when we did the Rod Temperton episode a couple of months ago. But Rod Temperton was the secret sauce of Heatwave. I mean, they still had great musicians. You had Johnny who could sing in a falsetto. You had Keith's voice was a little more gruff. You had Mario Mantese on bass for the time being. You had Ernest Bilbo Berger, in fact, who just passed away. He was the last original member of Heatwave to, unfortunately transition. So there's no more official original members of Heatwave. Roy Carter is still touring with Heatwave now, but Roy Carter came on after Too Hot to Handle. He came on the Central Heating album. But yeah, the official original members of Heatwave that were on Too Hot to Handle, they're all gone. They're all gone. And Rod Temperton wrote the songs that got them on the map. When you think about Always and Forever, that became one of those Quiet Storm legend songs. This is one of those songs that was made for the Quiet Storm. Always and Forever came out 1976. The Quiet Storm starts 1976. Perfect Marriage. Always and forever. Each moment with you is just like a dream to me that somehow came true. Just like Rod Temperton just wrote some amazing songs, man. And then Johnny to deliver it. Because, Johnny had a great voice, as a higher singer, but he could go low when he wanted to. And he's definitely in the lower register, just kind of like whispering to this woman, these sweet nothings. And it's absolutely tremendous. Then you take into account the Central Heating. Of course, Groove Line is my shit. Like, I used to have a music podcast called On the Groove Line. God, I wish I'd stuck with that because that was built in. I used to start the show with the instrumental to Groove Line. Groove Line is just one of those songs that if you don't tap your toe, you need to check your pulse. That's how dope the Groove Line is. And you take it, and then, of course, there's, what else is on that album? Mind-blowing Decisions. Mind-blowing Decisions. Causes head-on collisions. And I thought to myself, giving plenty time, all these decisions lying in my mind. The star of that album, though, foreshadowing, is Star of the Story. And it literally is like one of the most ethereal, spiritual, out-of-body experience love songs ever created. Like, if you just let yourself be entranced by that music, just, whew, Lord have mercy. And if you have somebody with you to experience that with, Lord have mercy. Whew. But yeah, Heatwave, they ran into some bad luck. Rod Temperton, of course. Quincy Jones discovered Rod Temperton. Of course, he was with Heatwave, but Quincy Jones discovered Rod Temperton and said, hey, yo, Rod, come on, man. You gonna write these songs with me and Lewis Johnson and Toto and all of these great other musicians that I got lined up. We got some work coming up for this. We got some work coming up for the Michael Jackson guy. He's going solo for good now. And that was the end of Rod Temperton and Heatwave. Then, of course, Johnny Wilder Jr. unfortunately has the accident that paralyzes him for the rest of his life. And Heatwave was never the same after that. They kept trying. I mean, they charted as far as 1982, but after Johnny's unfortunate accident and Rod Temperton pretty much, going off to be Rod Temperton, that was the end of Heatwave. But another Dayton group, Lakeside. And Lakeside was probably, I'd say the funkiest of them all. Of course, Lakeside was Stephen Shockley, Mark Wood, Otis Stokes, these tremendous musicians that, took themselves from Dayton to Los Angeles to get a record deal. First with ABC Records, then Dick Griffey was able to get them out of that contract and, to his new thing, which of course was Solar Records. We need to do a Solar Records episode on this channel one day. Because Solar has some slaps, boy. Shouts out to E40 for correcting us about the slaps. But yes. Lakeside, they did a little bit of everything. I mean, their first big hit was All the Way Live. And what I like about All the Way Live is there's a middle break where it takes like on a salsa type of vibe because there's I think it's I think there's a tambourine. There's definitely some bass. Boom, 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 boom. There's some congas, and then the piano. Dun, 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 dun. And that's Leon Silvers at his hard driving best, because everybody that you listen to that has worked for and been produced by Leon Silvers is you gonna work in his studio. I mean, you're not gonna just sit and listen to it. You gonna go in there and do take after take after take. So working with Leon, they got the best out of It's All the Way Live. Then you take, the Fantastic Voyage album, Fantastic Voyage. Hello. The legend song for Lakeside. There's a great ballad on there too. Otis Stokes, the falsetto singer, he sings it's called Say Yes. It is absolutely a song where a man is absolutely begging for a sniff of the honey pot. He's absolutely begging. You still resist me, girl. If you say yes, we'll sail on the stars, say yes, and I'll do my best. Otis was begging, boy. Again, this is what I talked about with the Quiet Storm episode. Dudes aren't as enthralled by women anymore. Like, dudes was begging back in the day, man. Like, literally just like on their knees, just like, baby, can you please let me smell it? Give me a sniff. Let me get a try, please. That's how it was. And now we've lost our way with that, unfortunately. That's why you don't get the ballads like that anymore. But Lakeside, they were consistent, up until, Solar Records, fortunes waned because, of course, the 80s meant that these major labels consolidated all the smaller labels, and everybody was just like, well, fuck, we might as well go with the bigger company. So that's what ended up happening with Lakeside. But Lakeside was remarkably consistent. My favorite Lakeside song was Something About That Woman. And that is on the Your Wish Is My Command album, where they have a cover of the Beatles' I Want to Hold Your Hand, where Mark Wood does a pretty damn good Jagger impersonation. In fact, he's better than Jagger on that song, honestly. But yes, Something About That Woman. It's a fun, upbeat, infectious song about what else? A fine ass woman walking down the street. There she goes again, walking down the street, pretty scene. Such a pretty thing. Something about that woman. I mean, they had hits, though. I mean, Lakeside had hits well up into the middle of the decade because there was a Raid from the Untouchable album, and Outrageous from their Raiders of the Lost Ark album. And by the time they left Solar for another label, Brown Mark, who played bass for Prince once upon a time, produced a song for them called Relationship. And that was their last real visit to the R&B charts. And then, of course, Lakeside fell on hard times because they couldn't get along. In fact, Mark Wood is touring with the original version, the original name. That unsung episode still bothers me because, I mean, no disrespect. I mean, I guess it's, I don't know if you can say no disrespect when you want to say something like this about somebody, but Mark Wood is crazy. How you going to take the name of the band and just talk about how could you go against a horse like me, just bragging about it? Had Stephen Shockley, who helped create Lakeside, in tears. Man, we'd have to rumble. I don't know why Steve Shockley has not knocked on Mark Wood's door yet and said, bring your ass outside. We're going to settle this right damn now. Taking the band name and talking about how you going to go against a horse like me. Boy, I'm about to send your ass to the glue factory. That's what's about to go down here. Shit. The nerve. Whew. But yeah, once again, I want all these old bands to just mend fences so we don't have to figure out which one of y'all is going on tour. We shouldn't, our parents are older now. I mean, my mom is 69 going on 70. I'm going to take her to see Frankie Beverly Saturday, July 6th in Philadelphia. So my mom will never, my mom probably still wants to go to some of these shows, but she don't know who's on them. Like, is this which version of the Stylistics is going? If it's Russell Tompkins Stylistic, she's not going to go because she doesn't like Russell Tompkins' voice. That's her. What version of Lakeside? Which version of War? Because there's War and then there's the original Lowrider band. You know, there's so many splits. I mean, there's a split version of Climax. Another solo act of note. So yeah, I want these bands to just, oh God, stop with the separate band stuff. Get your shit together. Mend these fences because y'all old as hell anyway. You ain't got that much time left. Pull yourselves together, do one final big Chitlin circuit, oldies tour, make your money, and enjoy the rest of your life. That's all I want y'all to do. But Lakeside isn't the only successful band. Of course, you know, we've already mentioned Ohio Players, Heatwave, and now we get to probably my favorite, probably because they have my favorite music, one of my favorite musicians of all time. That is, of course, Zapp and the late, great Roger Troutman. Zapp, of course, began as Roger in the Human Body, or Roger and the Fabulous Bells, if you want to go back further, because Roger had his younger brothers in touring with him when they were like adolescents, doing sock hop and tennis court dances, as Lester used to call them. And they became Zapp when they signed with Warner Brothers in 1979. And that, of course, was of some controversy because Bootsy and George had an argument about who was responsible for, because Zapp was supposed to originally go with Uncle Jam Records, which of course was George Clinton's company. Then of course they ended up going with Warner Brothers. So I don't know, Bootsy steered them away from Uncle Jam, or Warner Brothers pulled them away from Uncle Jam and blamed it on Bootsy or George. I don't know, but either way, Zapp was a Warner Brothers act, and that was Roger Troutman's brainchild. Everything that Zapp was Roger Troutman. When you think about it, 1980, more balanced than an ounce. That is the modern era. That is the dividing line for the modern era of R&B. Yes, there were electronic elements in music, in black music before. Think about Donna Summer's "I Feel Love," and certain records. I mean, Prince, you know, doing a whole lot of electric stuff on his first few albums, and Bernie Worrell's keyboards on "One Nation Under a Groove." Like "One Nation Under a Groove" is like the prototype for what would be boogie, what would become electro, what would become post disco. But Zapp, more bounce to the ounce, which Roger came up with because the album was just about finished and they needed one more song, and they were in agreement that they didn't have a hit single. So Roger said, "Let me take care of that." More bounce, much more bounce. Boy, that was a really ugly face I just did. That's the only way I can do the talk box, because I don't have a talk box on me. I need to get one though. I have a keyboard. I just don't have a talk box, because I would definitely start doing podcasts. Welcome to the Chris Stevens Show with Chris Stevens. I actually would do that. So hold me to it. But yes, Zapp. I mean, and Roger had solo albums too. There was many faces of Roger, and the Saga Continues. The Saga Continues was a late discovery for me, because never forget the first time I heard "In the Mix," because I randomly was putting stuff on. I have a Saturday morning run playlist where I listen to electro and dance stuff from the early 80s, because that's my favorite music discovery. And on Saturday mornings, that's when you need to really have a boost, because who wants to get up and run on Saturday morning? Me, I guess. But yeah, that's what, you know, but Roger is very heavy on there. And hearing "In the Mix" running through a wooded part of the Jack Markell Trail here in the Newcastle County, Delaware, it was like, whoo, this is lightning in a bottle, boy. I can go. It's in the mix. James Brown, we love you. Barry Gordy, we love you too. The Motown sound into the mix. Like if you haven't heard that song and you are not and your adrenaline isn't pumping, check your pulse. But yeah, Zapp and Roger had a nice run through the 80s. Then, of course, the 90s changed, with bands and electric music and all of that. And of course, Roger was rediscovered not rediscovered, but, reintroduced to a new audience on Dre and Pac's California Love. And everybody's like, yo, we need Roger on our talk box, man. Because he and Charlie Murdoch did a remake of the Persuaders Thin Line Between Love and Hate for that movie with H-Town. And I think that's Roger on talk box on my favorite H-Town joint, They Like It Slow. They Like It Slow. Oh my God. One of the best slow jams that was made for that nobody really talks about. Like, just go listen to They Like It Slow. And if you're not in the mood, you might need to go see somebody. But yeah, the unfortunate tragedy with Zapp was that Roger and his brother Larry was responsible for, the operation, the entire thing. And then, he had money worries. And then Roger was like, yo, I can do this by myself. And Larry was like, it's not going down like that. And unfortunately, he had an argument, I guess. Larry shot and killed Roger and then felt so bad he, ran away from the scene in his car and ended up killing himself. And Zapp was out of commission for a long time. But then their mother, Addie Mae Troutman, told the remaining boys, was like, nah, y'all go back out there and do it. And they were just like, Roger, trained all of us to be a front man. We just got to divide his parts up. And they would always say, he would just say, just don't bore my fans. Zapp's actually coming to Philadelphia at the Dell Labor Day weekend with Shaka Khan. I may try to make that happen. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, of course, there were other bands too. There's Faze-O, there's Sun. Faze-O has Riding High. Riding High was first heard by these two ears in Friday After Next, on next Friday when Carla is dancing on the table in Craig's Weeded Up Hallucination. You ever heard of El Nino? Well, this is El Negro. Come down here and let me tap that ass. Whew. Q was bugging. He was absolutely bugging. But yeah, but the last band I want to talk about is Slave. And Slave is another one of those groups that kind of gets lost in the shuffle because, again, they weren't on a major label. They were on Cotillion Records. And Slave was a bunch of teenagers when they started out because Slide hit for them in the summer of 1977. And these guys were like 16, 17 years old. You a low down lady, your walk is kind of shady. Slide, 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 slide. Why don't you slide? Da-da, 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 da-da. That was their hits. That was their first single. It might be. No, it's one of their biggest songs because there's Just a Touch of Love. Just a Touch of Love is my favorite Slave song because of the key change at the end. Because when you listen to Just a Touch of Love, which of course is Steve Arrington at his Steve Arrington best on the vocals, make me shine just a little bit, just a little bit. The woman sing with just a touch of love, and then of course there's just a touch of love, and there's the key change, and then of course there's and then it goes through a couple of choruses, but then that key change stays for a breakdown of the bass, the drum, the keyboard, and the guitar as well. And it's just like, 45 seconds to a minute of just bliss of, just, we're going to change this key up on y'all and you still going to rock. I mean, it goes like a couple keys higher. The beat tempo stays the same, but the key goes up a little higher. And it just, it's like, whew, an amazing song. Slave also had Watching You, which of course is better known as the Snoop Dogg, the interpolation of Gin and Juice. Walking down the street, watching ladies go by, watching you, do, do. Rolling down the street, smoking Indo, sipping on gin and juice, lay back with my mind on my money and my money. Yeah. So yeah, West Coast hip hop was very much influenced by Dayton, Ohio, of all places, because the claps on Zapp's shit, on Zapp and Roger shit, like on In the Mix and Heartbreaker. Heartbreaker is probably this quintessential West Coast funk template when you listen to it. Because if you listen to it, you're like, yo, Zapp wasn't from LA? Nope, there's from Dayton, Ohio, buddy. But everybody else heard that. And they're like, we got to copy this. So that's where, Dre got his sound from. That's where Quick got his sound from. That's where, Battle Cat, all these others, got their, their inspiration from. So Ohio had a huge role in West Coast hip hop, which is absolutely insane to think about. But then again, when you think about the Great Migration, it kind of tracks. Because, if you haven't read the book about the greatest book ever about the Great Migration, probably one of the greatest books about Black life ever, The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, I highly recommend you check that book out if you haven't already. But yeah, it's so much, it makes sense because a lot of people from Alabama went north to Ohio. Some people from Ohio went out west to Los Angeles, and it's just like, yeah, Black folk travel, man. We've had to stay transient because white folks won't let us settle down anywhere else. They took us from Africa for crying out loud. Black folks have just been transient in a survival mode kind of way. So, Dayton, Ohio, one of the capitals, one of the defunct capital of the world. I'm going to give you a song from each band that I think that highly represents who that band is, and you can, check that out on your own time. For the Ohio players, I definitely think that Sweet Sticky Thing is one that I would, want to introduce Ohio players fan to, a new Ohio player fan to. Heatwave definitely started a story. I would probably throw Mind Blowing Decisions in there. And of course, No Half Stepping. For Zapp the group, I'd probably say I Can Make You Dance. And for Roger, In the Mix. Then, of course, you could also go, Girl, You Should Be Mine. And of course, EPMD sample that for crossover. Whatever you want, whatever you need. Yep. And let's see, for Lakeside. Lakeside got so many choices, man. Lakeside has some really good songs. Yeah, I'll go with something about that woman. Faze-O, of course, Riding High, and Sun. Sun is here. We're here. Sun is here. Like, yeah, just go listen to some Ohio funk, man. You'll be glad you did. Tell them Chris Stevens sent you. That's always going to be the motto whenever I recommend something. Tell them Chris Stevens sent you. That don't mean shit, but they'll still understand that, they have a fan out there. And that, of course, that fan is me. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to this edition of the Black Music 130 series here on the Chris Stevens Writes YouTube channel. Greatly appreciate your time as always. Contact information will be in the description below. Also, if you are new to the channel, once again, thank you for stopping by. Be sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you can be notified of all new content that drops on this channel. If you are not new, thank you for stopping by again. Once again, be sure to like and comment on these videos so we can get a discussion going, so we can get the algorithm popping, so we can get this channel to be the best channel it can possibly be. So thank you all for watching, and until tomorrow, which will be Sunday, y'all be good or be good at it.